The African sun blazes mercilessly across the Pliocene landscape, casting long shadows through the scattered acacia trees that dot the endless savanna. 4 million years before the first human would ever set foot on the moon, before the first word would be spoken, before fire would warm the first cave, a small figure trembles at the edge of everything that would define our species. This is Kesi, barely 3 years old, her tiny fingers gripping the rough bark of a fever tree as she stares out at a world that seems impossibly vast and terrifyingly open. Her mother, Amara, crouches nearby, her weathered hands picking through the scattered seeds beneath a baobab tree. Every few seconds, her dark eyes dart toward her daughter, then scan the horizon for the telltale signs of danger that could emerge from any direction. The grass rustles with creatures both seen and unseen, massive saber-toothed cats that could crush bones with a single bite, hyenas whose laughs echo like the sounds of death itself, and leopards that move like liquid shadows through the golden stalks. But today, something extraordinary is about to happen, something that will echo through millions of years and change the trajectory of life on Earth forever. Kesi is about to take her first steps away from the safety of the trees onto 2 legs, into the open savanna that will either kill her or transform her species into something the world has never seen. The wind carries the scent of distant rain, mixing with the musk of elephant herds and the sharp tang of predator urine marking territory. Kesi's nostrils flare, processing information in ways that seem almost supernatural to modern humans. She can smell the approach of the afternoon thunderstorm hours before it arrives, detect the presence of a python coiled in the grass 30 yards away, and sense the nervous energy of a herd of antelope gathering near the watering hole. Her feet, still adapted for grasping branches, flex against the earth as she watches her mother work. Amara's movements are fluid, efficient, a dance perfected over countless generations of survival. She can strip a tuber from the ground in seconds, crack open a termite mound with surgical precision, and identify which berries will nourish and which will kill. But there's something different about the way she moves today. Something that makes Kesi's heart race with an emotion she doesn't yet have words for: anticipation. The clan is scattered across the landscape, 17 individuals who represent the cutting edge of evolution itself. Each one carries genetic innovations that won't be fully appreciated for millions of years. Their brains, though still small compared to what humans will eventually develop, are rewiring themselves with every passing generation. Their spines are straightening, their pelvic bones are reshaping, and their feet are slowly transforming from grasping appendages into something that can carry them across continents. Elder Tao sits in the shade of a massive rock formation, his scarred face telling the story of 5 decades of survival in a world that shows no mercy to the weak or slow. His left arm bears the marks of a leopard attack from his youth, white scars that trace the path of claws that came within inches of ending his genetic line before it could contribute to the future of the species. But he survived, learned, adapted, and now his knowledge flows through the clan like water through drought-stricken soil. He watches Kesi with knowing eyes, seeing in her small frame the same restless energy that drove him to explore beyond the familiar territories of his birth. The same curiosity that led him to discover new food sources, new shelter locations, and new ways to read the complex language of the African wilderness. He knows that today will be different, that the afternoon sun will witness something that hasn't happened in the 4 billion-year history of life on this planet. The temperature climbs past 100 degrees, and the clan begins to show signs of heat stress. This is when their bipedal adaptations become most crucial. Unlike their quadrupedal cousins, who present their entire backs to the scorching sun, Amara and her family can minimize their exposure to the deadly rays by standing upright. The narrow profile of their bodies creates natural air circulation, cooling them through convection currents that their ancestors could never access. But standing upright comes with trade-offs that could prove fatal. Their hands are no longer available for rapid escape into the trees. Their spines, still evolving from their arboreal configuration, ache with the constant strain of vertical posture. Most dangerously, their eyes are now elevated above the grassline, making them visible to predators from vast distances across the open plains. A distant roar splits the afternoon air, causing every member of the clan to freeze in place. It's the sound of a cave lion, a massive predator that can grow to twice the size of modern lions, and whose hunting strategies are refined by millions of years of pursuing exactly this type of prey. The roar comes from the direction of the watering hole, meaning the clan's primary water source is now compromised by one of the most efficient killing machines ever to walk the earth. Kesi's body reacts before her mind can process the danger. Her muscles tense, her breathing becomes shallow, and adrenaline floods her system with the raw power of survival instinct. But instead of dropping to all fours like her ancestors would have done, instead of scrambling up the nearest tree, she does something unprecedented. She takes a step forward, onto two legs, toward the sound of danger rather than away from it. The movement is clumsy, uncoordinated, a wobbling stride that threatens to send her tumbling into the dust. But it's also magnificent. A declaration of independence from the trees that have sheltered her species for tens of millions of years. Each step represents hundreds of thousands of years of incremental genetic changes finally expressing themselves in a single moment of evolutionary breakthrough. Amara's heart nearly stops as she watches her daughter venture into the open. Every maternal instinct screams at her to grab Kesi and carry her to safety, but something deeper holds her back. Perhaps it's the recognition that this moment has been building for generations, that the genetic lottery has finally produced a child capable of making the transition that will define their future. The grass beneath Kesi's feet tells a story of abundance and danger in equal measure. The rainy season has produced a carpet of green that stretches to every horizon, but hidden within that verdant paradise are pitfalls that could end her journey before it truly begins. Venomous snakes coil around the roots of bushes, their heat-sensing organs locked onto the warm signature of approaching prey. Thorns, sharp enough to pierce hide, reach out like grasping fingers from every shrub and tree. Yet Kesi continues forward, drawn by an impulse she cannot name, towards something she cannot see. Her balance improves with each step, her confidence growing as her body learns to coordinate the complex mechanics of bipedal locomotion. The rhythmic motion of walking upright requires precise timing between dozens of muscle groups, a neurological symphony that her brain is composing in real time. Behind her, the rest of the clan watches in fascination and terror. Young Jengo, barely older than Kesi herself, feels the same magnetic pull toward the open ground, but lacks the coordination to follow. His attempts at upright walking result in spectacular tumbles that would be comical if the stakes weren't so desperately high. Each failure teaches him valuable lessons about balance, momentum, and the delicate relationship between center of gravity and forward motion. The sun continues its relentless journey across the cloudless sky, and the heat begins to affect even the most experienced members of the clan. Water becomes the dominant concern, overriding even the threat of predation. The watering hole, despite its proximity to the cave lion, represents the difference between survival and death by dehydration. Tao rises slowly from his resting place, his joints protesting the movement after hours of inactivity in the oppressive heat. His weathered hands signal to the other adults, a complex system of gestures that conveys information about timing, routes, and contingency plan. The language of survival requires no words, only the shared understanding that comes from facing death together on countless previous occasions. They will move toward water as a coordinated unit, using their collective intelligence to minimize risk while maximizing their chances of accessing the life-giving resource. But Kesi has already made her choice. Her small legs carry her steadily away from the clan's defensive formation toward a destiny that none of them can imagine. She moves with the fearless curiosity of childhood, unaware that her footsteps are being pressed into soil that will preserve the evidence of this moment for paleontologists to discover millions of years in the future. The landscape she traverses is a masterpiece of natural selection in action. Every plant, every insect, every microscopic organism represents the culmination of evolutionary experiments stretching back to the dawn of life itself. The acacia trees have developed thorns specifically to deter the browsing of large mammals, creating a natural fortress that provides both shelter and defense. The grass has evolved seeds that can survive passage through the digestive systems of herbivores, using the very animals that consume them as vehicles for dispersal across vast territories. A family of meerkats watches Kesi's approach from their burrow entrance, their sentinel system already having catalogued her as a potential threat to be monitored rather than engaged. Their social structure mirrors many of the cooperative behaviors that Kesi's own species is beginning to develop, from shared child-rearing responsibilities to coordinated responses to predator threats. In many ways, they represent an alternative evolutionary path toward intelligence and social complexity. The afternoon heat reaches its peak as Kesi encounters her first major obstacle, a shallow stream that cuts across her path like a silver ribbon in the golden grass. The water runs clear and cold, fed by mountain springs hundreds of miles to the east, carrying with it the mineral wealth of volcanic highlands and the microscopic life that forms the foundation of the entire ecosystem. For a quadrupedal animal, crossing the stream would present no particular challenge. A quick leap or careful wade would suffice to reach the opposite bank, but for Kesi, balanced precariously on two legs, the rushing water represents a test of her newly acquired locomotor skills. The stream bed is slick with algae, the current strong enough to knock a small child off balance, and the far bank rises at an angle that will require careful coordination to climb. She approaches the water's edge with the methodical caution that has already become a hallmark of her species' problem-solving approach. Her eyes scan the surface for the safest crossing point, evaluating depth, current speed, and the stability of potential foot placements. This analytical process, taking place in a brain barely larger than a modern chimpanzee's, represents cognitive capabilities that will eventually produce mathematics, engineering, and space travel. The first step into the stream sends a shock of cold through her system, triggering physiological responses designed to maintain core body temperature in challenging conditions. Her blood vessels constrict near the skin surface, redirecting warm blood toward vital organs. Her breathing quickens to increase oxygen intake, preparing her muscles for the increased energy demands of navigating difficult terrain. Halfway across, disaster strikes. Her right foot slips on a moss-covered rock, sending her tumbling toward the rushing water. In that moment of crisis, multiple evolutionary adaptations work together to save her life. Her longer arms, still retaining some of the proportions inherited from arboreal ancestors, spread wide to maintain balance. Her flexible spine curves to shift her center of gravity away from the direction of the fall. Most importantly, her developing brain processes spatial information at lightning speed, calculating trajectories and adjusting muscle responses faster than conscious thought. She recovers, regains her footing, and completes the crossing with a triumphant splash onto the far bank. The achievement might seem minor to modern observers, but in the context of human evolution, it represents a breakthrough equivalent to the first powered flight or the first steps on the lunar surface. She has demonstrated that bipedal locomotion can successfully navigate complex terrain, opening up entire continents for exploration by her descendants. From across the stream, Amara calls out with a vocalization that combines relief, pride, and urgent concern. The sound carries emotional complexity that will eventually evolve into the rich tonal languages spoken by modern humans. Even at this early stage, the acoustic communication system used by Kesi's people can convey nuanced information about emotional states, immediate threats, and spatial relationships. The call also serves as an inadvertent beacon for any predators within hearing range. Sound travels far across the open savanna, and the ears of African carnivores are exquisitely tuned to detect the vocalizations of potential prey. Within moments of Amara's call, distant shapes begin moving through the grass, converging on the location like shadows given substance and deadly purpose. Kesi seems oblivious to the approaching danger as she explores the new territory beyond the stream. Here, the vegetation grows differently, shaped by slightly different soil conditions and drainage patterns. The trees are taller, their canopies providing deeper shade that supports different communities of insects, birds, and small mammals. The diversity of life in even this small area would require teams of modern biologists years to fully catalogue and understand. She discovers a termite mound, its clay architecture rising from the earth like a miniature mountain range. The structure represents one of nature's most sophisticated examples of climate control and social organization, housing millions of individuals working together with precision that rivals any human engineering project. The termites have created ventilation systems that maintain constant temperature and humidity throughout the colony, agricultural chambers where they cultivate fungus gardens, and defensive structures designed to repel invasion by rival colonies and predator species. Using skills learned from watching her mother, Kesi selects a thin grass stem and begins probing the termite mound for accessible tunnels. The technique requires patience, dexterity, and an understanding of termite behavior that borders on the supernatural. She must identify the correct entry points, insert the grass stem to precisely the right depth, and withdraw it at exactly the right moment to capture the maximum number of protein-rich insects. The termites, disturbed by her intrusion, release pheromone alarm signals that mobilize the colony's defensive forces. Soldier termites with enlarged heads and powerful mandibles stream toward the breach, ready to sacrifice themselves to protect their reproductive queens and the future of their genetic line. But Kesi's technique is too refined, her timing too perfect. She extracts a grass stem laden with nutritious termites and immediately begins the delicate process of consuming them without losing a single precious morsel. This feeding behavior represents far more than simple sustenance gathering. The use of tools to extract insects from confined spaces requires abstract thinking, manual dexterity, and cultural transmission of knowledge from one generation to the next. Modern chimpanzees display similar behaviors, but Kesi's approach shows subtle innovations that will eventually lead to the development of more sophisticated implement use. As she feeds, her enhanced nutritional intake fuels the metabolic demands of her rapidly developing brain. The omega-3 fatty acids found in termite larvae are particularly important for neural development, providing the biochemical building blocks necessary for the expansion of cognitive capabilities. Each termite she consumes contributes directly to the intellectual capacity that will allow her species to dominate every ecosystem on the planet. The shadows begin to lengthen as the afternoon sun descends toward the western horizon, painting the savanna in shades of gold and amber that seem to set the very air on fire. This is the most dangerous time of day, when the major predators begin to stir from their midday rest and start the process of selecting targets for their evening hunts. The temperature differential between day and night creates wind patterns that carry scent information across vast distances, allowing carnivores to track potential prey with devastating accuracy. A leopard emerges from the shadows of a distant kopje, its spotted coat providing perfect camouflage against the dappled light filtering through acacia branches. The cat moves with liquid grace, each step placed with the precision of a creature that has never known failure in the hunt. Its yellow eyes scan the landscape methodically, cataloging every movement, every sound, every scent that might indicate the presence of prey. Kesi's location beyond the stream has isolated her from the protective vigilance of the clan, making her an ideal target for a solitary predator. Her small size and awkward bipedal gait mark her as vulnerable, while her distance from trees eliminates the escape route that has protected her ancestors for millions of years. She represents exactly the type of isolated, defenseless prey that leopards specialize in hunting, but evolution has not left her entirely helpless. Her elevated posture gives her a commanding view of the surrounding terrain, allowing her to spot approaching threats from greater distances than would be possible for a quadrupedal animal. Her hands, freed from locomotor duties, remain available for wielding defensive tools or communicating alarm signals to distant clan members. Most importantly, her developing brain provides her with cognitive flexibility that can generate novel solutions to unprecedented survival challenges. The leopard begins its approach, moving with the patient deliberation of a predator that understands the value of timing in successful hunting. Each step is calculated to minimize noise and visual detection, taking advantage of natural cover and the directional patterns of wind and light. The cat's hunting strategy has been refined over millions of years of predation, representing the accumulated wisdom of countless successful kills. Kesi continues her termite extraction, apparently oblivious to the approaching danger. But her peripheral vision detects subtle movements in the grass. Her acute hearing picks up the barely audible sound of padded feet pressing against dry earth, and her enhanced olfactory system processes chemical signatures that spell death approaching on. Silent pause. Her body begins preparing for crisis before her conscious mind fully processes the threat. Adrenaline floods her system, sharpening her senses and flooding her muscles with explosive energy. Her heart rate increases dramatically, pumping oxygen-rich blood to the organs and tissues that will determine whether she lives or dies in the next few minutes. Her breathing deepens automatically, maximizing gas exchange to support the intense physical demands of a life-or-death struggle. The moment of contact arrives with shocking suddenness. The leopard launches itself from the concealing grass in an explosive burst of speed and power that would be invisible to most prey species until far too late. Its claws extend like curved daggers, its jaws open to reveal canine teeth capable of crushing vertebrae with a single bite, and its eyes lock onto Kesi's small form with the focused intensity of absolute predatory commitment. But Kesi does something that no leopard in the history of African predation has ever encountered. Instead of freezing in terror, instead of attempting to flee on all fours, instead of curling into a defensive ball, she stands upright and faces the attacking predator with the steady gaze of a species that refuses to accept its position in the food chain as permanent. Her small hands grasp a broken acacia branch, wielding it like a spear with coordination that seems impossible for someone so young. The pointed end of the branch traces an arc through the air that intersects perfectly with the leopard's trajectory, forcing the great cat to adjust its attack angle in mid-leap. This split-second disruption of the leopard's carefully planned assault creates an opening that Kesi exploits with the instinctive precision of a born survivor. She sidesteps the modified attack with a grace that belies her recent mastery of bipedal locomotion, her feet finding secure purchase on ground that would have sent her tumbling just hours earlier. The leopard's claws rake through empty air where her torso should have been, its momentum carrying it past her position and into the thorny embrace of an acacia shrub. The predator recovers quickly, its flexible spine allowing it to twist and reorient faster than most prey species can process. But those crucial seconds of recovery time give Kesi the opportunity to establish a defensive position that maximizes her advantages while minimizing the leopard's natural superiority in speed and strength. She backs toward the termite mound, using its clay bulk as a barrier that prevents the cat from attacking her from behind. Her vocalizations pierce the afternoon air with a frequency and intensity that carry across miles of open savanna. The calls serve multiple purposes simultaneously, alerting distant clan members to her location and predicament, disorienting the leopard with unexpected acoustic assault, and coordinating her own physiological responses for sustained defensive action. The complexity of information encoded in her alarm calls approaches the sophistication of true language, conveying not just the presence of danger, but specific details about predator type, location, and tactical situation. The leopard circles her position with growing frustration, its hunting instincts confused by prey behavior that falls outside its evolved expectations. Every previous encounter with bipedal hominins has followed predictable patterns: panic, flight, easy capture. But Kesi's response challenges fundamental assumptions about the relationship between predator and prey that have governed African ecosystems for millions of years. From across the stream, the rest of the clan responds to her distress calls with unprecedented coordination. Amara leads the rescue effort, her maternal instincts overriding the natural caution that would normally prevent her from crossing water barriers in the presence of active predation. Tao and the other adults form a defensive formation that demonstrates tactical thinking, sophisticated enough to rival modern military units. They approach the stream crossing with weapons hastily gathered from the immediate environment: rocks with sharp edges, branches hardened by seasons of drought, and lengths of wood shaped by fire and friction into deadly points. These improvised tools represent the technological foundation upon which all future human achievements will be built, from the first stone axes to the rockets that will eventually carry their descendants to other worlds. The leopard recognizes the changing tactical situation and begins to reassess its commitment to the hunt. A single, isolated juvenile represents an acceptable risk-to-reward ratio, but a coordinated group of tool-wielding adults presents challenges that could result in injury or death for the predator. African leopards are solitary hunters, precisely because group-living prey species can mount collective defenses that overwhelm individual predators. But the cat is not quite ready to abandon its quarry. Years of successful hunting have taught it that persistence often succeeds where initial attacks fail, that prey animals frequently exhaust their defensive energy and become vulnerable to renewed assault. It settles into a patient watching position, yellow eyes tracking every movement of both Kesi and her approaching rescuers. The afternoon sun continues its descent toward the horizon, and the changing light patterns begin to favor the leopard's natural camouflage abilities. The dappled shadows created by acacia branches provide perfect concealment for a spotted predator, while the increasing contrast between light and dark areas reduces the visual acuity of prey species adapted for daylight hunting. Kesi maintains her defensive posture with remarkable stamina for someone so young, but the sustained adrenaline response is beginning to take its toll on her small body. Her muscles tremble with fatigue, her breathing becomes labored, and her grip on the makeshift spear begins to weaken. The leopard senses these subtle changes and prepares for a renewed assault that will exploit her declining defensive capabilities. The rescue party reaches the stream just as Kesi's strength begins to fail. Amara leads the crossing with reckless courage, her powerful legs driving her through the rushing water faster than safety would normally dictate. Behind her, Tao coordinates the other adults in a crossing pattern that maintains defensive integrity while maximizing speed of deployment on the far bank. The leopard makes its decision as the first rescuers emerge from the stream. Rather than face a coordinated defense by multiple tool-wielding opponents, it chooses tactical withdrawal to seek easier prey elsewhere. The great cat melts back into the grass with the same liquid grace that marked its initial approach, leaving behind only the lingering scent of musk and predatory intent. Kesi collapses into her mother's arms with the exhaustion of someone who has aged years in the space of a single afternoon. Her small body shakes with the aftershocks of sustained terror and physical exertion, but her eyes burn with an intensity that speaks of fundamental transformation. She has faced the ultimate test of survival and emerged not just alive, but fundamentally changed by the experience. The rescue party forms a protective circle around mother and child as they begin the journey back to clan territory. Their movements are more coordinated than before, their awareness heightened by the shared experience of successful collective action against a major predator. They have discovered something profound about their own capabilities, something that will reshape their approach to survival in the dangerous world of Pliocene Africa. As they travel, Kesi continues to walk upright despite her exhaustion, her small legs carrying her with increasing confidence across terrain that would have been impassable for her just that morning. Each step reinforces neural pathways that will never again allow her to be comfortable moving on all fours, marking her irreversible transition to the bipedal lifestyle that will define her species. The setting sun paints the western sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple, creating a natural cathedral of light that seems to celebrate this moment of evolutionary breakthrough. In the distance, other clans call to each other across the darkening landscape, their vocalizations carrying news of the day's discoveries and dangers. The acoustic network that connects scattered bands of early humans across hundreds of square miles pulses with information that will influence survival strategies for generations to come. Night falls quickly in equatorial Africa, bringing with it a completely different set of survival challenges. The temperature drops precipitously, forcing the clan to seek shelter in the rocky outcroppings that provide both protection from wind and concealment from nocturnal predators. The caves and overhangs that will eventually become humanity's first architectural modifications are already serving as crucial refuges for these early pioneers. As the clan settles into their nighttime defensive positions, Kesi remains close to her mother, but maintains the upright posture that has become her new default configuration. Her transformation from quadrupedal child to bipedal explorer has been completed in the space of a single day, marking her as one of the first individuals of her species to make the transition that will eventually carry humans to every continent on Earth. The stars emerge in the clear African sky, their light unimpeded by the atmospheric pollution that will characterize later human civilizations. The same stellar configurations that guided Kesi's ancestors through millions of years of evolution now shine down upon a species poised to begin its own journey toward the stars themselves. In the darkness beyond the clan's defensive perimeter, the sounds of Africa's nighttime hunters echo across the landscape, the whoop of hyenas, the roar of lions, and the haunting calls of leopards seeking new prey. But within the protective circle of her family, Kesi rests with the confidence of someone who has discovered that survival depends not on hiding from the world, but on standing upright and facing it with courage, intelligence, and the support of others who share her unprecedented journey into humanity's future.